As the dawn broke, the soft rays of sunlight filtered through the wooden beams of the dilapidated cabin, casting a warm glow on the two souls huddled inside, James and Hank. The silence outside felt almost surreal, a blanket of stillness that contrasted sharply with the chaos they had just escaped. James's eyes stayed locked on Maddox, still tense and wary, every muscle in his body attuned to the slightest hint of danger. Maddox stood a few paces away, hands raised. His expression, usually cocky and self-assured, was now laced with an urgency that James couldn't ignore. "I know you have questions, James. But right now, the Steel Serpents are more than just a biker gang. They're a branch of something much larger. Their operations are tied to politicians, corrupt law enforcement, and I fear they have you firmly in their sights because of who you are." James's mind churned with suspicion, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Maddox's story. "What do you mean, who I am? You think they care about some former soldier and his dogs?" Maddox's gaze sharpened. "No, they care about what you have. The USB drive. It has information that leads to the very core of their network, people who would do anything to protect their interests. If they find you, they'll stop at nothing to get it back." Hank shifted beside James, letting out a low growl. His instincts were sharp, but they couldn't rely on pure suspicion alone. Still, James wanted to protect his family at all costs. "And why should I trust you?" he challenged. "You were part of a system that betrayed me." "Because I'm not your enemy, James," Maddox implored, stepping closer but still keeping his hands visible. "I fell in with the wrong crowd. The gang started as mere thugs, but they've grown. They've made alliances. I'm here to help you stop them before they can do irreversible damage. You have skills and resources that they want to extinguish, and it's only a matter of time before they find you again." James studied Maddox, weighing his words carefully. Hank sensed the tension and leaned against James's leg, a touch of reassurance that brought clarity to James's chaos-ridden mind. "Tell me how you plan to help," James said at last, lowering his weapon a fraction but not holstering it just yet. Maddox exhaled, relief evident on his face. "The drive contains coordinates. I can help you decipher them. We can expose the Steel Serpents for what they are, an organized crime syndicate disguised as a biker gang. But we'll need to move quickly. They have eyes everywhere. We must reach the location marked on that map before they do." James glanced down at Hank, who was now eagerly attentive, ready to follow wherever James led. He nodded, resolute. "All right, we'll work with you, but if you try anything funny," he warned, raising his weapon again. "I'll understand," Maddox replied, the tension palpable. "Now we just need to get to the intel before they do." They wasted no time, quickly gathering the scant supplies they could find in the dusty cabin. James secured the USB drive again, tucking it away safely as they set out into the forest. The early morning mist curled around their ankles like a ghost whispering secrets, but each step they took was stronger now, driven by purpose. As they ventured deeper into the woods, Maddox explained the contents of the drive. "There's a shipment scheduled to arrive just north of here. If we intercept it, we'll secure evidence that ties the gang to high-level corruption, and then we blow the lid off this operation." "Blowing the lid off sounds great in theory, but there's no small task without a full plan," James replied, casting wary glances around the forest, assessing potential escape routes as they walked. "I've got contacts," Maddox insisted. "People who can back us up. We can grab this cargo and use it to draw out their leader, Stone. If we can take him down, we can disrupt their operations." Abruptly, Hank stopped in his tracks, ears perked, body tense and alert. James exchanged a knowing look with Maddox. "What is it, boy?" he asked softly. A low rumble rolled through the forest like an approaching storm, murmurings of engines cutting through the picturesque morning. Hank's growl intensified, and James's heart raced as he felt the imminent threat approaching. "They're already onto us," James whispered harshly. Maddox turned pale, panic flashing in his eyes. "We need to hurry or risk getting caught." Bursting into a sprint, James led the way, Hank following closely, his determination fueling their escape. The sounds of motorcycles roared behind them, the Steel Serpents closing in, hunting their prey with the ferocity of wolves. James's mind raced with strategies. They couldn't afford to get trapped. They had to gain ground and prepare for the fight ahead. Head for the creek, James called out, knowing the water would muffle their scent. The trio barreled through the underbrush, the icy water rushing beneath their feet as they crossed a shallow creek. They allowed themselves a moment's reprieve as the sounds faded a notch. "We can't stop now," James urged, scanning the trees for any sign of their pursuers. They pressed on, the tension in the air thick as uncertainty loomed over them like a gathering storm cloud. Maddox, struggling to keep pace, glanced at James, urgency woven into his features. "We're almost there," he insisted, pointing to a clearing ahead. As they broke through the trees, a sprawling field came into view where makeshift trucks and pallets were set up, the gang's shipment already half unloaded. James felt his blood run cold. The steel serpents were just days away from moving their contraband, and they had to act now. "Stick close," James instructed, lowering himself, his tactical instincts taking over as he glanced around for a vantage point. Hank at his side, always watchful. They ducked behind a pile of crates and peered out toward the loading area, where bikers manned the scene, hauling heavy boxes labeled with markings indicating dangerous contraband. This wasn't just smuggling, this was potentially life-threatening material poised to cause chaos. "We plant explosives here, and we'll take out the operation and the evidence," Maddox said, pulling a small bag from his pocket that appeared to be filled with grenades and other devices. James nodded, keeping the low growl of Hank beside him as motivation. "We need to work fast." "Hank, stay alert." The dog nodded, instinctively ready to protect as they formulated their plan. Maddox worked quickly, setting up charges along the perimeter while James and Hank kept watch. "They won't know what hit them," James whispered, glancing at Hank, who was poised and low to the ground, tail still despite the tension. Suddenly, a loud shout echoed across the field, jolting James from his focus. One of the bikers spotted a shifting shadow among the trees and was quick to alert the others. "Hey, over there." In an instant, chaos erupted. The gang was on high alert, scrambling to arm themselves. "We've been spotted," Maddox shouted, tossing the final charge into its position. "Let's move." James wasted no time. He grabbed Hank's harness, feeling the thrill of adrenaline coursing through him as he sprinted back through the trees, retreating to a vantage point. Just as they reached a safe spot, Maddox triggered the explosives. The ground shook beneath them, the shockwave reverberating through their bodies as flames erupted behind them, illuminating the forest in a fiery glow. The roar of chaos filled the air, punctuated by the shouts of confusion from the startled gang. Emerging from their hiding spot, they made their move to flank the chaos.
"Now,
we go for Stone," James called as they maneuvered around the perimeter of the chaos inflicted on the steel serpents. Through the smoke and confusion, they spotted the imposing figure of Stone barking orders, his face twisted in anger as he bellowed at his men. "Get it together. Don't let them escape." Hank barked lowly, his instincts guiding him as they charged forward, James's weapon steady as he took aim. Both men pushed through the remnants of the chaos, finally closing the distance to the leader. "Stone!" James roared, leveling his shotgun at the gang leader's chest. The surprise registered on Stone's face just as James and Hank surged forward. Stone took a step back, his bravado faltering for the first time. "You think this ends well for you, Harlow?" he spat, trying to regain control. "You're just a rat in a trap." James's resolve hardened, fueled by determination.
"No, Stone.
You're the rat. And the trap's about to close on you." Shots rang out as the gang scrambled, returning fire. James never flinched. He moved like a shadow, every instinct kicking in. Hank bounded beside him, dynamic and fierce, a living extension of James's will as they fought together, a united front against the overwhelming odds. The battle was chaotic. Gunfire echoed around them, punctuated by shouts of anger and fear. But with every well-placed shot, James's confidence grew, fueled by Hank's unwavering support at his side. Suddenly, in the midst of the chaos, their path cleared momentarily, revealing an opening toward Stone, who was scrambling for his weapon. As James lunged, Hank charged with a ferocity unmatched, bringing the gang leader down with a swift lunge and growl, pinning him against the ground. Enough! James shouted, weapon trained on the down leader, who now cowered beneath Hank's fierce glare. Glaring down at Stone, James felt a mix of triumph and vengeance. This ends here. No more operations, no more violence. Stone, realizing he had lost, spat in defiance. You think this is over? You've only begun to scrape the surface, Harlow. James leaned in, locking eyes with Stone. I'll burn the surface, Stone, and I'll expose every filth that hides under it. With that, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. The tables had turned, and the law was on its way. They had won the battle, a tactical victory, but the war against these syndicates had just begun. James holstered his weapon, focusing back on Hank, who had been steadfast and resolute despite the chaos surrounding them. Let's get out of here, buddy. We have work to do, he said, a proud yet determined light in his eyes, knowing the day might be won, but the fight and their journey was far from over. As they walked away from the embers of the battlefield, James's resolve was clearer than ever. They would expose the truth hidden in shadows, drawing together a web of allies willing to stand against the tide of crime and corruption. They would continue to fight, not just for themselves, but for a world where loyalty and justice could flourish, united by bonds only the fiercest of friendships could forge. In the heart of the wilderness, with the rising sun at their backs, a soldier and his dog, a hero and his best friend, made their way into destiny, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. A journey of courage, sacrifice, and untold adventures awaited them, as long as they faced it together. And this was only the beginning.